When IVF access came under fire across America, Donald J. Trump didn't hesitate. He led. With the nation reeling from legal confusion and political silence, he stepped forward with a bold executive order to protect families. Standing beside him was Samantha Busch, a fearless advocate whose own battle with infertility inspired millions. Together, they turned pain into policy and advocacy into action. The media tried to spin it, but Americans saw the truth. Leadership that delivers. Trump didn't just respond. He reframed the entire debate. But what came next? No one in Washington saw coming. President Donald Trump has never shied away from doing what others won't. And in March 2025, when millions of families were left in confusion and fear following a wave of legal uncertainty around in vitro fertilization, he once again stepped up where others hesitated. As the media spun chaos and politicians ducked for cover, President Trump delivered what the country needed most: clarity and courage. He signed a powerful executive order expanding access to IVF, lowering treatment costs, and reaffirming the right of every American family to pursue the dream of parenthood. It was bold, it was compassionate, and it was long overdue. But Trump didn't just sign a piece of paper. He made a statement. One that cut through the noise, rejected the culture of fear, and put families first. Standing alongside this historic moment was Samantha Busch, wife of NASCAR champion Kyle Busch. She wasn't there as a celebrity. She was there as a mother, a survivor of a decade-long battle with infertility, and a champion for others facing the same struggle. Her Bundle of Joy Fund has helped over 100 families access IVF, something most politicians only talk about fixing. President Trump didn't use her. He gave her a bigger stage. He recognized that her voice, and the voices of families like hers, deserved to be heard at the highest level of government. And unlike past administrations that paid lip service to reproductive health, Trump took action. Where others held panels and gave speeches, he changed policy. With one stroke of the pen, he transformed IVF from a private burden into a national priority. The media tried to twist it. They always do. But Americans saw the truth. Parents, doctors, and working families saw a president fighting for them, not for headlines, but for results. Donald J. Trump showed once again what leadership looks like. Bold decisions, real people, real impact. This wasn't just a win for the pro-family movement. It was a masterclass in how a president leads with both strength and heart. And for Trump, it was only the beginning. While the rest of Washington was frozen by indecision, President Trump moved. He didn't wait for polling. He didn't hide behind committees. He saw a problem and took action. That's what set him apart. And that's what made his IVF executive order more than just a policy change. It was a signal. Because at the time, the country was reeling from a court decision that caught even experts off guard. In February 2024, the Alabama Supreme Court ruled that frozen embryos should be considered children under state law. Overnight, clinics halted IVF procedures. Families who had waited years to start or expand their families were thrown into uncertainty. And as news spread, fear took hold, not just in Alabama, but across the country. In the wake of that ruling, politicians panicked. Some issued statements, others said nothing at all. But no one had a plan, except Donald J. Trump. His executive order not only protected access to IVF, it rejected the idea that growing families should be treated as a legal risk. He spoke directly to Americans, not in complicated legal jargon, but in plain words. We will protect life, and we will protect families. It was a message that resonated far beyond party lines. And that's what terrified his opponents. Because while Democrats scrambled to tie IVF to broader culture war narratives, Trump had already reframed the issue entirely. He positioned himself, not as a culture warrior, but as a protector of family dreams. A president focused on the future of American families, not the politics of the past. This wasn't accidental. It was strategic. Trump saw something others didn't. IVF wasn't a partisan issue. It was a personal one. And he knew how to win on personal ground. While left-wing commentators tried to paint him as out of touch, Trump was standing beside Samantha Busch, a woman whose real-life struggle touched millions. Not a political plant, not a talking head, a mother, a wife, an advocate. Her voice wasn't scripted. Her tears weren't rehearsed. She brought authenticity to an issue too often ignored in Washington. Samantha's presence turned the policy into something more. It became a movement. Her foundation, the Bundle of Joy Fund, had already changed lives. Now, with Trump's support, that mission had the full backing of the federal government. IVF wasn't just a personal struggle anymore. It was a national priority. Even mainstream outlets were forced to admit the optics worked. Photos of Samantha Busch standing alongside top White House officials circulated widely. Interviews with her lit up national media. Social platforms erupted with support. And through it all, Trump stayed focused. No grandstanding, no partisan jabs, just action. But as the headlines piled up, so did the panic from the political left. Because Trump had just done something they didn't expect. He had taken a traditionally progressive issue, access to reproductive technology, and made it his own. And more importantly, he had made it popular. They scrambled to respond. Former President Biden, under pressure from his base during his final year in office, had attempted to regain control of the narrative. His administration pointed to a 2024 initiative that expanded IVF coverage under federal employee health plans. But the move landed flat, quiet, technical, bureaucratic. Meanwhile, Trump had delivered something else entirely. A bold, emotional, camera-ready moment backed by real policy, and voters noticed. Polls taken just days after the executive order showed a surge in support among suburban women, independents, and even younger voters. Across Middle America, particularly in states where access to IVF was shaky, families who had felt forgotten now felt seen. The timing couldn't have been more critical. With the 2024 campaign cycle still fresh in the nation's memory, the political class expected Trump to return to his usual playbook: rallies, slogans, confrontation. But instead, he added a new dimension to his leadership: compassion paired with conviction. He didn't abandon his principles. He expanded them. He showed that protecting families isn't about slogans. It's about solutions. And make no mistake, the impact was real. IVF clinics reported a spike in hopeful inquiries after the order. Healthcare organizations praised the move for bringing national attention to an often ignored issue. Even critics had to admit, the Trump White House had cut through the noise and delivered a message that mattered. And yet, as the success became undeniable, the attacks became more desperate. Some pundits claimed Samantha Busch had been used for political optics, but the American people didn't buy it. Her foundation had existed for a decade. Her advocacy was documented and sincere. If anything, it was the first time Washington had listened. And Donald Trump made sure her voice wasn't just heard, it was amplified. Because for him, this wasn't about winning news cycles. It was about winning trust. It was about reminding the country that real leadership isn't about checking boxes. It's about making bold decisions in uncertain times. And when families were in crisis, when the system was silent, and when hope was dimming, Donald J. Trump stepped in. And that's when the narrative changed. Not just for IVF, not just for Samantha Busch, but for the very idea of what presidential leadership should look like. In a time of uncertainty, Trump delivered certainty. In a time of fear, he delivered hope. And with that signature on the executive order, he sent a message that reached far beyond the White House lawn. This is what it looks like when America puts families first. But Trump's enemies weren't finished, and neither was he. The IVF executive order wasn't just a moment. It became a defining mark of President Trump's second term. In the face of chaos, he brought calm. In the shadow of fear, he delivered reassurance. And he did it not with performative outrage or endless committee meetings, but with a pen, a podium, and the will to act. While critics continued their spin, Trump pushed forward. He directed federal health agencies to partner with state governments, expanded IVF support in rural areas, and called for insurance reform to make fertility care more affordable for all Americans. It wasn't a headline, it was a mission. And through it all, families responded. Letters poured into the White House, stories of hope, gratitude, and new beginnings. Many of them mentioned Samantha Busch by name, thanking her for being the voice they never had. But even more thanked the president who turned that voice into national policy. Trump didn't just protect IVF, he elevated it. In a divided political climate, he reminded Americans of something deeper. That our strength begins at home, with strong families and a government willing to support them. The message was clear. Leadership isn't about following trends, It's about setting a new standard. And when history looks back at the IVF fight of 2025, it won't remember the noise. It will remember the president who put families first and never looked back. What is your opinion about Trump's action? Let us know in the comments.